Julian Bennett, a millionaire art curator, had everything: wealth, prestige, and a future planned out for him. But tonight, he did the one thing that could ruin it all. He kissed a random woman, Maya Cruz, right in front of his manipulative ex-fiancée, Lila Montgomery. Why? To make her jealous, of course. But what happened next? Well, that's when everything went off the rails. The kiss was supposed to be just a game, a momentary victory over Lila's control. But as the cameras flashed and the world watched, the consequences began to unfold faster than Julian could have ever imagined. But the next day, Julian realized that his attempt to hurt his ex had only set off a chain of events that could ruin him forever. Before we dive deeper into the chaos, hit subscribe so you don't miss a single twist, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Do you think Julian's move was worth it, or did he just make things a whole lot worse? It wasn't just a kiss, it was a message. But when that message backfires, and the truth starts to unravel, what happens next could change everything for both of them. Stay with us to find out how a moment meant to make someone jealous ended up becoming the biggest mistake of Julian's life. The evening was electric, the air thick with anticipation. Julian Bennett, as always, was the center of attention. But tonight, he wasn't just the charming millionaire art curator. Tonight, he was a man cornered by his family, by expectations, and most of all, by Lila. His ex-fiancée, standing across the room with that perfect smile, was a constant reminder of the life Julian had been pressured into, a life he never truly wanted. Lila had always been a force, a woman who could manipulate any situation to her advantage. She had Julian wrapped around her finger for years. The engagement was supposed to seal the deal, but the deeper he got, the more suffocated he felt. Her family's connections, their wealth, and their expectations, they all made him feel small, controlled. And tonight, at the Beverly Hills Art Center, Julian had had enough. As Lila laughed with the crowd, Julian's gaze drifted, looking for an escape from the suffocating tension. That's when he saw her. Maya Cruz. She wasn't part of their world, but in that moment, she felt like his only option. He didn't know her name at first, but he knew what she represented. Freedom. A chance to break away from the chains of his family's expectations, even if just for a few minutes. He didn't think it through. He never did. He walked up to her, his heart pounding, a smirk forming on his lips. Without warning, he leaned in and kissed her, an act of rebellion, of defiance. The cameras clicked. Flash after flash lit up the room. The crowd went silent, stunned by the boldness of his move. Lila's face contorted with anger, but there was something else in her eyes, a flash of hurt, of jealousy, that Julian hadn't expected. Maya stood there, frozen. The kiss had meant nothing to her. To him, it was a statement, a game. But for her, it felt like a betrayal. She didn't even know him, didn't understand the web she had just been pulled into. Julian pulled away, his breath heavy, his heart racing. Maya's eyes met his, filled with confusion and something deeper. Her lips parted as if she was about to say something, but the words never came. The silence between them spoke louder than any words could. Then the whispers started. From across the room, Lila's voice could be heard cutting through the murmur of the crowd, but Julian didn't care. He had done what he'd set out to do. Hurt her. But what he didn't realize, what none of them realized, was that this kiss would set off a chain of events far more complicated than he could ever have imagined. Maya didn't need this. She didn't ask for it. But now, she was part of his world, whether she wanted to be or not. And the next day, the aftermath would hit harder than any kiss ever could. The damage was done. The world was watching, and Julian had just made his bed. The headlines, the whispers, the judgment, all of it would follow him. What he thought was a simple act of defiance had now placed him in a trap of his own making. And Maya? She didn't know what she had gotten herself into. Her phone buzzed incessantly, messages flooding in. The kiss had gone viral. People were talking. The gallery, the charity, the elite guests. They were all buzzing with one question. Who was the mystery woman? Maya's name was now everywhere. But it wasn't just the public attention that worried her. It was Julian, and his family, and whatever game they were playing. Maya didn't expect her life to change overnight, but it had. And as the world clamored for answers, she couldn't help but wonder, was this kiss just the beginning of something much worse? Would she be dragged deeper into Julian's tangled world? And more importantly, why did she feel like she was beginning to care? The chaos was just beginning. The morning after the kiss was a quiet storm, one that slowly grew louder with every passing hour. The first thing Maya noticed when she woke up wasn't the soft buzz of her phone or the weight of the events from last night. It was the fact that everything had changed. She sat up in her bed, the sheets still tangled around her, and reached for her phone. The screen lit up with a flood of notifications, texts, calls, and social media posts. Maya scrolled through the messages in disbelief. Who's that woman Julian kissed? Was that for real, or just a publicity stunt? #mystery woman, #Julian Bennett, #drama alert. The comments were ruthless, the speculation endless. The kiss, meant to provoke Lila, had backfired in ways Julian couldn't have anticipated. But he wasn't the one who would suffer. No, that was all on her now. Her phone buzzed again, a call this time. She didn't recognize the number. Hello? Maya Cruz? The voice was smooth, deep, and surprisingly calm. Yes, speaking. This is Cameron Hayes. I work with Julian Bennett. We need to talk. Maya's heart skipped a beat. She had heard of Cameron Hayes, a wealthy businessman, and the very type of man Julian had grown up surrounded by. I don't know what you think you saw last night, but we've got an opportunity for you. Cameron's voice dropped, his tone professional, but there was something more, something she couldn't quite place. Opportunity? Maya repeated, frowning. We'd like to make use of the attention you've gotten. I have a project I believe you'd be perfect for. Let's meet. I'll have my assistant send you the details. She was about to protest, but he hung up before she could get a word in. Maya stared at the screen for a long moment, processing what had just happened. This wasn't just a game anymore. This was real life, and it was spiraling faster than she could keep up. She dressed quickly, grabbed a cup of coffee, and sat down to digest what she had just been dragged into. Was this all just a stunt? Were people using her to get to Julian? Or was Cameron genuinely offering her something worth pursuing? The text from Cameron's assistant arrived a few minutes later, detailing a meeting at one of the most prestigious art galleries in West Hollywood. Her gut told her to back away, to escape this whirlwind before she got too tangled up. But another part of her, the one that was tired of living paycheck to paycheck, the one that had always dreamed of a chance like this, pushed her forward. She had nothing to lose. Julian was still in bed when he checked his phone, hours after the kiss, and hours too late to fix anything. He had received dozens of messages, but the one that made him sit up was from his mother, Elaine Bennett. Julian, what on earth have you done? The text was blunt, sharp. His fingers hovered over the screen, the weight of his choices settling in. The kiss had been meant to be a small rebellion, a way to take control of his life, even if just for a fleeting moment. But it hadn't turned out that way. Maya wasn't just a random woman anymore. She was now in the spotlight, and Julian was going to have to deal with the consequences. The consequences he had been avoiding for too long. She's not a part of this world, Julian. She doesn't belong here. You have to fix this. His mother's words echoed in his mind, as sharp and cold as the chilled air outside his penthouse. And you better do it quickly, before this turns into something more. But Julian didn't know what fixing meant anymore. What he did know was that Maya was caught up in this mess because of him, and he had no idea how to get her out. The fallout wasn't just public, it was personal. Maya didn't want to think about it, didn't want to deal with the attention or the fact that she was now a part of Julian's world, a world of privilege, art, and manipulation. But here she was, being offered something that could change her life, for better or worse. By the time she arrived at the gallery, she was already questioning everything. Was she making a mistake? Was this just a way for Julian's world to absorb her and spit her out when they were done with her? She walked into the gallery, the soft lighting casting an almost surreal glow on the expensive art displayed along the walls. Cameron was waiting, leaning casually against a column. When he saw her, he straightened up, his expression shifting to one of genuine interest. "Maya, I'm glad you came. Let's talk business." Cameron's voice was low, inviting, but Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She glanced around, trying to focus on the art, but her mind was elsewhere. Julian. The kiss. The camera flashes. The way she had felt in his arms. It was only a matter of time before the true price of that kiss came crashing down on both of them. Maya had no idea what Julian had dragged her into, but she was already too far in to pull out now. As Maya sat down to listen to Cameron's proposal, she couldn't shake the thought that Julian was watching her from afar, in the shadows, possibly regretting his choices. But what was he really thinking? And what was she going to do next? Tomorrow, everything will change again. But how far would you go to protect your reputation and your heart? Maya couldn't help but feel out of place as she sat across from Cameron Hayes in the sleek, minimalist gallery. The room was quiet, almost too quiet, as if the weight of the conversation was too heavy for the space to hold. Cameron's eyes were sharp, calculating. He didn't speak at first, letting the tension hang in the air like smoke before he lit the match. "You're here because you've caught people's attention," Cameron began, his tone cool but measured. "The kiss. It was unexpected, and now you're part of a narrative that's growing bigger by the hour. People love a good story, especially one with mystery." Maya shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her eyes flickering to the paintings that adorned the walls. The art felt like a barrier, an escape from the conversation she hadn't quite signed up for. She had come here to hear Cameron out, to see what his offer was. But something in her gut was telling her that this wasn't going to be as simple as she hoped. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked, her voice steady, but her mind racing. "I'm not interested in being a part of some spectacle." Cameron smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes, one that felt like a well-practiced mask. He knew how to play this game. "No one's asking you to be a spectacle, not directly at least," he replied. "I'm offering you a chance to control your narrative, to turn what happened last night into something more than a viral moment. We want to launch a collaboration, an exclusive art exhibition, co-hosted by you and Julian Bennett. We'll use this moment, this scandal, to catapult you into the art world's elite circles." Maya blinked, her thoughts swirling. The words exclusive and elite hung in the air, tempting her with promises of a world she had only ever dreamed of. The art world was everything she wanted, a chance to break free from the mundane, to create something lasting, meaningful. But it came at a price she wasn't sure she was willing to pay. "You want me to work with Julian Bennett?" she asked, the name coming out more like a statement than a question. "And what's in it for him? Is this just another manipulation? Another way to keep him in the game?" Cameron leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he watched her closely. "Julian's already caught in his own mess," he said, his voice lowering slightly. "This exhibition could be his way out. A clean break from the family, from Lila, from everything that's been suffocating him. But he needs your help to pull it off. You both need each other more than you think." Maya's stomach twisted. The mention of Julian sent a shiver down her spine, a mix of anger and something else she hadn't been willing to confront yet. She had been part of his game for a moment, and she hadn't liked it. But this was different. This was real. Her future. Her art. Maya hesitated, trying to wrap her mind around it. Could she work with Julian? Was this the opportunity she had always wanted? Or was it just another trap designed to suck her back into his world? Her eyes flickered back to Cameron, who was watching her with the same predatory calm. He was giving her an out, but she knew better than to trust offers that seemed too good to be true. "What's the catch?" she asked, suspicion creeping into her voice. Cameron's smile widened, as if he were waiting for the question. He leaned back, his hands clasped in front of him. "There's no catch, Maya," he said, voice smooth as velvet. "Just a chance to become who you were always meant to be, to leave your old life behind and join the circle that matters. Think about it. You're on the brink of something big. Don't let it slip away because of old grudges and confusion. Let's make this work, for both of you." Maya could feel the weight of his words pressing against her chest, a tempting offer that promised the kind of success she had always dreamed of. But what was it going to cost her? What was Julian's role in all of this? She wasn't naive enough to think he was just going to walk away from everything. But was he willing to risk it all for her? And why was she even considering this? Was this really about the art? About her future? Or was it about Julian? About the kiss? About what they had shared, however briefly? The clock on the wall ticked, and the silence grew heavy between them. Maya stood up, the decision weighing on her. "I'll think about it," she said, her voice firm. "But I'm not sure this is the kind of world I want to be part of." Cameron simply nodded, offering her a business card, which she took reluctantly. "I understand," he said, standing as well. "But don't take too long. The opportunity won't wait forever." As Maya stepped out of the gallery, she was already drowning in thought. She had no idea what was coming next, but she knew one thing for sure. Nothing about this was simple anymore. The kiss had changed everything. But what was it really going to cost her? She glanced at the business card in her hand. Cameron Hayes. And beneath it, exclusive art exhibition, Julian Bennett and Maya Cruz. Her heart raced at the thought of stepping into this world, of becoming someone bigger than the woman who had walked into that gala the night before. But was it all worth it? Would she survive in a world where the stakes were so high? As she stepped into her car, her phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number flashed on the screen. "I need to see you. It's urgent, Julian." And just like that, the storm began again. Because this time, Maya wasn't just a player in someone else's game. She was about to make a choice, and that choice could change everything. Maya barely slept that night. The offer from Cameron lingered in her mind, a dangerous temptation she couldn't shake. It was more than just a career opportunity. It felt like an invitation into a world where she had no control. The kiss, the chaos, the sudden rush of attention. Julian had dragged her into this whirlwind. And now, the consequences were crashing down on her. The next day, she found herself standing outside Julian's penthouse building, staring up at the sleek glass structure. The sunlight reflected off the windows, making the building look almost impenetrable, like a fortress of wealth and power. She had no idea what she was about to walk into. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Julian's usually calm demeanor was nowhere to be found. He paced back and forth across the living room, his hands running through his hair. He hadn't expected Maya to show up, hadn't expected her to even consider the offer from Cameron. But here she was. "Maya," he said, his voice tight. "I didn't want any of this to happen. You shouldn't be involved in this mess." Maya crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering as she watched him. "I didn't ask for any of it, Julian. But here we are." She could see the frustration in his eyes, the guilt written all over his face. The man in front of her wasn't the smooth, confident millionaire she had seen the night of the kiss. He was raw, vulnerable, and for a moment, she wondered if she was the one who had become the pawn in his game. Julian stopped pacing and turned to face her. His expression softened, but the tension between them was undeniable. He took a deep breath, as if gathering his thoughts before speaking. "I need your help," he said, the words almost a whisper. "This whole thing with my family. It's suffocating. The kiss last night wasn't just to make Lila jealous. It was a way to prove to everyone that I'm not their puppet, that I can make my own choices." Maya raised an eyebrow. "So, you used me to make a point?" she asked, her voice sharp. Julian winced at her words. "No, I didn't use you. I didn't expect things to get this complicated. But now, we're in this together." Maya couldn't help but feel the pull of his words. She was already in deeper than she had ever planned. But was she willing to continue? Julian took a step closer, his tone softening. "I want to make a clean break from my family. I want to live on my own terms. But I need something, someone, on my side. You're the only person I've met in a long time who doesn't want anything from me." Maya blinked, surprised by his honesty. She had always assumed that the world of wealth, art, and power was full of people who wanted to use others for their own gain. But Julian wasn't asking for anything from her, at least not in the way she expected. What exactly are you asking? She asked, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside her. Help me. Let's make this work. Us, together. The exhibition, the publicity, everything. We can use it to build something real. For you, for me. A chance to be free. The words hung in the air between them, heavier than she could have imagined. This wasn't just about art anymore. It wasn't about a career opportunity or a momentary escape from her struggles. It was about trust, commitment, and something far more complicated than she had ever bargained for. Maya looked at him, her mind racing. Everything inside her screamed to walk away, to leave this charade behind. She had never wanted to be entangled in Julian's world. Yet here she was, standing in his luxurious penthouse, being offered something far more valuable than money: freedom. But freedom came with its own set of chains. I'm not your pawn, Julian, Maya said, her voice firm, despite the butterflies in her stomach. If we do this, we do it on equal terms. No more pretending, no more games. Julian's eyes softened, and for the first time since their paths had crossed, he looked at her with something that wasn't part of his usual polished persona. I wouldn't have it any other way. The air between them crackled with tension, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. They both knew that their next move would determine the course of everything. But the question lingered. Would Maya agree to help Julian, or would she walk away from the chaos, from the man who had brought her into his world? Just as Maya opened her mouth to speak, her phone buzzed again, the screen flashing with a message from Cameron. The offer stands. Don't take too long. Julian's gaze flickered to her phone, his expression unreadable. It was a decision Maya didn't want to make. But the game was about to begin, and there was no turning back now. The decision was made, or at least, it felt like it. Maya had agreed to help Julian, though she wasn't entirely sure what she had signed up for. The lines between personal and professional, between truth and illusion, were already blurring. But what else could she do? She wasn't about to walk away from this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The next few days were a whirlwind of planning, meetings, and media attention. The art exhibition was set to take place in less than a week, and every step forward seemed to pull her deeper into Julian's world. The kiss, once a small, impulsive act, had now turned into something monumental, a story that the world couldn't get enough of. And with all that attention came the scrutiny. Maya had always prided herself on being an outsider in a world of pretentiousness, but now, as she stepped into the gleaming halls of the Beverly Hills Art Center, she couldn't ignore the glares and whispers from the elite crowd. The whispers grew louder as Julian and Maya entered together. Cameras flashed in every direction, catching them in their fabricated romance. Julian's arm was around her waist, his hand firm but protective. She hated how easy it was to play the part. I'm fine, she muttered to him, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. But the truth was, she was anything but fine. The art world, her own insecurities, Julian's expectations. It all felt like it was closing in on her. Julian, sensing her discomfort, leaned in slightly, his voice low enough for only her to hear. You're doing great. Just a little longer, and it's over. But was it? Would they both really just walk away from all of this once the exhibition ended? Or was it just beginning? The night progressed with more press conferences, more questions about their relationship, more attention from people who cared only about the story, not the people at the center of it. Maya tried to stay composed, smiling through the endless barrage of questions, but every time she saw Julian's mother, Elaine, glaring from across the room, she felt a new level of pressure build in her chest. Elaine was a formidable woman, cold, calculating. She didn't like Maya, and it was obvious. She could feel her eyes on her like a weight, watching, judging. At one point, when Julian was caught up in a conversation with one of the gallery curators, Elaine approached Maya, her heels clicking sharply on the polished floor. I hope you understand the role you're playing here, Maya. Elaine's voice was smooth, almost sweet, but it had an edge. This is a business, not a game. You're not here to get involved with Julian. You're here to help him. Maya raised an eyebrow, her defenses rising. I'm not here to play games, Mrs. Bennett. She didn't add that she already felt like a pawn. Elaine smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I'm sure you're not. But make no mistake, there are people who don't appreciate interruptions in their carefully constructed lives. Her gaze flicked to Julian across the room. This is more than just a kiss, Maya. This is about his future. Don't forget your place. The weight of her words lingered long after Elaine had walked away, leaving Maya with the feeling that she was treading a line that was dangerously thin. And then, the media attention took another turn. The gossip blogs, the social media posts, they weren't focused on the art anymore. They were focused on them, on Julian and Maya. The mystery behind their connection, the rumors swirling about the real reason behind their fake relationship. By the time Maya got back to her apartment that night, the tension was unbearable. She tossed her keys onto the counter and collapsed onto her couch, her phone buzzing relentlessly beside her. One message stood out. It was from Cameron. I need to talk. It's urgent. A cold chill ran down Maya's spine. She didn't want to get pulled back into Cameron's world. He was part of the machinery that had led her to this point. But she couldn't ignore the pull. She called him back. Cameron's voice was different this time. Urgent, almost frantic. Maya, the press is starting to catch wind of something bigger. They're digging into Julian's past, and you're right in the middle of it. You need to act fast. What do you mean? Maya's voice was barely above a whisper. The family's dirty laundry is about to be aired, Cameron warned. If this blows up, it won't just be Julian's life on the line. It'll be yours too. The exhibition could be your way out, or your downfall. Do you want to be a part of that? Maya felt the ground beneath her feet shift again. It wasn't just about the art anymore. It wasn't about being swept into Julian's world. It was about survival. The moment she had stepped into that kiss, she had opened the door to something far more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. She didn't know if Julian understood the stakes. He was wrapped up in his own battle with his family, his own quest for freedom. But she was in this too now, and it was starting to feel like there was no way out. Maya stared at her phone screen, her mind racing. Should she call Julian? Should she confront him about the family secrets Cameron had alluded to? Or was it time to walk away, to find her own path before she got caught up in something she couldn't escape? But the messages kept coming. More texts, more calls, more pressure. And then, she saw something that made her heart stop. A tweet from one of the biggest art critics in the country, showing an image from the gala, with the caption, "Is this the real reason Julian Bennett kissed a random woman? #Bennett scandal." The world was watching, and Maya had no idea how long she could keep pretending it wasn't all falling apart. The days following the media frenzy felt like a blur. Maya barely had time to process everything before the world demanded her attention. Julian had been distant lately, wrapped up in meetings and calls that only seemed to add more stress to an already volatile situation. Every interaction between them felt strained, like a thread pulled too tight, ready to snap at any moment. But there was something else. The sense that the walls around her were closing in. At night, her apartment felt suffocating, like the silence pressed in from all sides. The messages, the calls, the constant flood of attention. It was all too much. But through it all, there was a growing curiosity, a need to understand why things were falling apart, and why it was Julian's world that seemed to be at the center of it. It was on one of those restless nights, when the world outside her window seemed too quiet, that she decided to dig deeper. Something didn't add up. Julian's reluctance to confront his family, his constant distractions, his inability to open up, it all pointed to something more than the fake engagement and the kiss. It pointed to a secret. She pulled out her laptop, the soft glow illuminating her face as she began to search for any shred of information she could find about Julian Bennett and his family. She knew better than to trust the headlines, but the more she read, the clearer it became. Julian Bennett wasn't just a successful millionaire. He was also a man with a past, a tangled history with his family that he had done everything in his power to hide. The deeper she dug, the more troubling it became. The Bennett family wasn't just wealthy. They were powerful. Their wealth built on years of shady business dealings and questionable investments. Julian had inherited more than just money. He had inherited an empire, one that came with strings attached. Strings that he couldn't cut, no matter how hard he tried. His father's name came up repeatedly in the articles. Richard Bennett, the patriarch of the family, whose business empire spanned multiple industries, each one seemingly built on a foundation of secrecy. And then there was his mother, Elaine, whose influence was felt in every corner of Julian's life. It wasn't just a family legacy, it was a prison. Maya's heart raced as she scrolled through the articles. Julian had been living in the shadow of his father's expectations, forced into a world that didn't leave room for anything else. And as she read, she began to realize that the kiss, the reason for everything that had happened, wasn't just an impulsive act of rebellion. It was a cry for freedom, a desperate attempt to break free from the suffocating grip of his family. But at what cost? Maya closed the laptop and leaned back in her chair, the weight of the information pressing down on her chest. She had learned more in the last few hours than she had in the entire time she'd known Julian. And the more she uncovered, the more she questioned everything. His motives, her role in this mess, and the future they were building, or destroying, together. As much as she wanted to be part of Julian's world, she couldn't ignore the fact that it was built on lies, manipulation, and family secrets. If she was going to survive in this world, she needed to know where she stood, and if she even wanted to stand there at all. But as the days wore on, it became clear that Julian wasn't the only one with a secret. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced at the screen. A text from Cameron. "I need to see you. It's urgent." Maya's pulse quickened. The urgency in his message sent a wave of unease through her. She had known Cameron was involved in the family's web of power, but this was different. His words felt like a warning. And in a world where trust was in short supply, she couldn't afford to ignore it. She met Cameron at a small, nondescript cafe in the heart of West Hollywood, the kind of place where deals were made in whispers over half-empty cups of coffee. When she walked in, Cameron was already seated in the corner, his eyes scanning the room as if he were waiting for someone to catch his attention. "I know you're trying to stay out of this, Maya," Cameron said as she sat down, his voice low. "But you need to hear this." Maya nodded, her instincts telling her that whatever Cameron had to say was far from good. "Julian's family has more skeletons in the closet than you can imagine," Cameron continued, leaning forward. "And they're not the kind of people who let things slip. They've been keeping secrets from him, secrets that could ruin everything he's worked for. And you..." He paused, his eyes narrowing. "You're at the center of it now, whether you like it or not." Maya's heart dropped as the weight of his words hit her. The family secrets Julian had been hiding weren't just about his past. They were dangerous, capable of destroying everything. And she was in the thick of it now, whether she wanted to be or not. "What are you saying?" Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's something you need to know about the Bennett legacy, and I don't think Julian knows the full truth yet. But if you're serious about helping him, you need to make a choice. The truth isn't something you can walk away from. It's bigger than both of you." Maya felt a chill run through her. The stakes were higher than she had realized, and with every step forward, she was getting deeper into a world she didn't fully understand. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. Another text from Julian. "We need to talk. It's time." Maya's stomach churned. What was he about to reveal? And more importantly, what did she have to lose now? The truth was slipping through her fingers, and no matter how fast she tried to run, it was catching up. The secrets were unraveling, one by one, and it was only a matter of time before everything came to a head. Would Julian stand by her, or was the truth too much for him to face? The days after Maya's meeting with Cameron felt like a strange limbo, each one blending into the next with a weight that pressed on her chest. She couldn't shake the feeling that the life she had once known was slipping away. Julian's world, with all its glitz, drama, and buried secrets, was more than just a place where she had momentarily found herself. It was becoming her reality. Julian, too, seemed different. The walls he had built around himself had cracked, and Maya could see it in his eyes, his vulnerability. The stoic millionaire she had first met had been replaced by someone who was as lost as she felt, someone who didn't know if he was capable of escaping the family's stranglehold, or if he even wanted to. That evening, Julian invited her to a quiet dinner at the rooftop restaurant of a luxurious hotel. The city lights below sparkled like 1,000 tiny stars, and for a moment, Maya allowed herself to forget the whirlwind that had brought her here. It was just the two of them, away from the constant cameras, the prying eyes, and the suffocating expectations. Just for a night, she could pretend she was more than a pawn in a game she barely understood. The conversation flowed easily at first, and the tension between them seemed to dissipate. But the unspoken words hung in the air, heavier than the silence between them. Maya could feel Julian's gaze on her, searching, as if he were looking for something he couldn't quite define. They spoke about art, about his childhood, details Maya had never heard before. He spoke of his father's coldness, his mother's control. It was the first time Julian seemed truly vulnerable, not the polished, perfect figure the world saw, but the man behind the mask. Maya felt an unexpected pang of sympathy, but she was careful not to let her guard slip too much. As they finished their meal, the conversation began to slow. The restaurant emptied, and the soft hum of the city was the only sound between them. The space between them had closed, and as Julian leaned in, his hand brushing against hers, Maya felt the undeniable pull of something more, something she couldn't resist any longer. Julian's voice was low, a gentle whisper in the dim light. Maya. Her name on his lips felt like an invitation. She wasn't sure if it was the tension of the evening, the closeness they had shared, or just the undeniable chemistry between them. But before she could stop herself, she reached for him, her hand curling into his. For the first time, the kiss wasn't a game. It wasn't a plan. It wasn't about manipulation or proving a point. It was real. And as Julian's lips met hers, the world around them seemed to disappear. For a moment, it was just them. Two people caught in the chaos of their lives, finding something unexpected in each other. The kiss was slow, tentative at first, as if they were both unsure of the ground they were treading. But the hesitation melted away quickly, and the kiss deepened, raw and powerful. When they finally broke apart, the air around them seemed to crackle with unspoken emotion. Maya's breath came in short bursts, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't remember the last time she had kissed someone like this, someone who made her forget everything else, someone who made her feel like she was finally seen for who she was, not just who the world thought she should be. Julian's eyes met hers, and for a brief moment, there was no pretense, no expectations, just two people caught in a moment of connection. "I didn't expect that," he whispered, his voice hushed, the weight of their shared silence hanging heavy between them. Maya smiled faintly, her breath still shaky. "Neither did I." The reality of what they had just done hit Maya like a wave, crashing over her in a rush of conflicting emotions. The kiss had been undeniable, but it wasn't just about desire. There was more to it, too much to make sense of in one night. She pulled back slightly, breaking the contact, unsure of what to say or do next. "Julian, I don't know if this is a good idea," she said softly, her voice barely audible against the hum of the city below. He looked at her, his expression unreadable, and for a long moment, the world seemed to pause. Then, with a slow exhale, he nodded. "I don't know either," he admitted, his voice low and raw. "But I think I need you to stay." Maya's heart twisted at his words, but she wasn't sure if it was because she wanted to stay, or if she was just trapped by the unpredictability of it all. Julian's world was pulling her in deeper, and each time she tried to escape, it seemed like she only got further tangled in the web. She didn't have the answers. She didn't even know what she wanted anymore. As they sat in the quiet after the kiss, a buzz from Maya's phone broke the silence. It was a message from Cameron. "The story's getting bigger. I've spoken to the press. Your role in the exhibition is about to be public. You can't back out now." Maya's fingers tightened around the phone, her pulse racing. The decision was out of her hands. The kiss may have changed everything, but now, Maya was faced with a new reality. She wasn't just involved in Julian's world. She was now a part of the story. And no matter how much she wanted to step away, it was already too late. The days after the kiss felt like they were moving in fast forward, but the world around Maya seemed to be spinning slower than ever before. She couldn't escape the weight of Julian's family, the growing public attention, and the knowledge that she was now part of a narrative, one that she had never asked to be a part of. The art exhibition, once a simple collaboration, was now at the center of everything. The media had picked up on the story, and the whispers about Julian and Maya were no longer just whispers. They were headlines. The kiss, the fake relationship, and the mysterious woman had captured the public's imagination, and everyone was eager for more. But the attention was no longer flattering. It was suffocating. It all came to a head that night. The art exhibition was a success, but as the night wore on, tension built between Julian and his family. His mother, Elaine, had arrived, as expected, with an entourage of high society figures. She hadn't been thrilled about the collaboration, and her gaze, sharp and calculating, was fixed on Maya as soon as she entered the room. The glittering gala, with its polished floors and luxury-laden guests, felt more like a cage than a celebration. Maya could feel the weight of every eye on her as she stood by Julian's side. It wasn't just the press now. It was the family. The people who held the keys to Julian's future. Elaine, who had been so gracious just a week ago, now looked at Maya with open disdain. She barely acknowledged her presence, and when she did, it was with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The tension was palpable. Julian was on edge too, his back stiff as he tried to engage in conversations with his family and friends, all the while casting furtive glances at Maya. She could see the frustration in his eyes, the conflict between his desire to break free and the reality of his family's grip on him. "Julian," Elaine called out from across the room, her voice cutting through the crowd. "We need to talk. Now." Maya watched as Julian excused himself, walking toward his mother with a reluctant expression. She knew this was the moment that would decide everything, the moment that would either free Julian or bind him even tighter to his family. But she didn't know what side he'd choose. As Julian walked away, Maya felt a chill settle over her. She wasn't just standing in the middle of a room full of strangers anymore. She was standing in the middle of a battlefield. And she had no idea who the enemy was. Maya's thoughts were interrupted by a voice behind her. "Lila. Of course. You must be feeling pretty special right now, huh?" Lila's tone was venomous, her eyes flashing with jealousy and bitterness. "Caught the attention of the great Julian Bennett, didn't you? I wonder how long that'll last." Maya turned, surprised to see Lila standing there, arms crossed, her face a perfect mask of faux sweetness. "I didn't ask for any of this, Lila," Maya replied coolly, not backing down. "But you seem to have a lot to say about it." "You think you've won?" Lila sneered. "You think this little act will make Julian love you? You're just a distraction, a way for him to get out of marrying me. But he'll get over you. He always does." Maya's heart beat faster, the anger rising within her. She wanted to slap the smug look off Lila's face, but she kept her composure. "Maybe I'm the one who's tired of being the one who's always replaced," she said softly. But the words cut deep. Lila's eyes narrowed, and for a split second, Maya saw the raw, unfiltered rage beneath the mask. Before Lila could respond, Julian appeared beside them, his face tense. He had overheard enough to know that things were on the edge of breaking. His mother was waiting for him, impatient, demanding. "Come on, Maya," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Let's get out of here." Maya looked between the two of them. Julian, caught between two women who couldn't be more different, yet equally dangerous in their own right. Lila was the past, the world that had tried to claim him, while Maya was the present, the woman who didn't need him to survive but found herself pulled in regardless. She wanted to stay away from the drama, to step back from the chaos. But the truth was, she was already in too deep. Her heart ached with the realization that she couldn't leave now, not when she was finally starting to see who Julian really was and how much she had come to care for him. They left the gallery together, stepping into the cool night air. Julian's face was a mixture of exhaustion and something else. Guilt, maybe, or shame. Maya couldn't tell, but she knew something had changed between them. The kiss, the promises, the shared moments, they all seemed to matter less than the looming pressure of what they were both trying to escape. As they made their way down the street, the tension between them was palpable. Maya didn't want to break the silence, but she couldn't ignore the question that had been gnawing at her for days. "Julian," she began, her voice steady but soft. "What do you want? From me? From this?" Julian stopped in his tracks, the weight of her words settling between them. He turned to face her, his eyes searching hers as if trying to find the right answer. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, finally, his voice was barely a whisper. "I want to be free, Maya. Free from everything. My family, my past, all the lies. But I can't do it alone. I need you." Maya felt her breath catch in her throat. Free. That word, that idea, had been what had brought them together in the first place. But could she trust him? Could she trust herself, or would she only end up caught in the same web he had been trying to escape? The air between them was thick with unspoken words, with everything that they had yet to confront. But before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. A text from Cameron. "The media's getting too close. They're going after your family, Julian. It's time to make your move. Now." The world was moving faster than they could keep up. The choices were no longer theirs to make. What would Julian do now? What would Maya do? The stakes had just been raised, and this time, there would be no turning back. The days following the gala felt like a constant storm, the kind that rages quietly at first, building and building until everything around you feels suffocated. The media continued to press, the headlines still screaming about the mysterious woman at Julian Bennett's side. But this time, things felt different. The tension was palpable, like everyone, his family, the press, even Maya, was waiting for the inevitable. And just when she thought she couldn't handle any more chaos, Lila Montgomery made her move. It was an unexpected visit. Maya had been pacing in her apartment, her thoughts consumed by the growing complexity of her relationship with Julian. She was still trying to process the weight of his words that night. "I need you." But as the doorbell rang, the last thing she expected to find standing on the other side was Lila. Lila's eyes were cold, calculating, and the smile on her face was more of a sneer than anything else. She didn't even wait for an invitation. "We need to talk," Lila said, her voice dripping with disdain as she walked into the apartment without waiting for Maya to respond. Maya didn't want to engage, but the sheer force of Lila's presence made her feel small. Lila had always known how to control the room. She had control over Julian, over their entire past, and it was clear that she wasn't going to let that go so easily. "I'm not here to make nice," Lila continued, her eyes flashing. "But I'm here to warn you. Julian might be pretending that this whole thing with you is real, but trust me, it's a game. You're just a distraction. The next shiny thing he's using to prove a point." Maya stood her ground, though her heart was racing. "I'm not a distraction, Lila, and I'm not here to compete with you. I'm just trying to figure out where I stand in this whole mess." Lila smirked. "You should know. You're playing with fire, Maya, and fire burns." Maya tried to shake off the sting of Lila's words, but they stuck with her, gnawing at the edges of her thoughts. She couldn't deny that Lila was right about one thing. This wasn't just a simple affair. It was a power play, a manipulation of public perception and Julian's life. But as much as Maya tried to resist it, she couldn't help but wonder. Had she become just another part of Julian's rebellion against his family's control? Was she just a tool in the game, or was there something real between them? As Lila left with a final venomous look, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that Lila's words had planted a seed of doubt in her mind. But there was no time for uncertainty. The next phase of the plan was already in motion. Julian had promised that this exhibition, this collaboration, would be their escape. His from his family's control, and hers from a life of struggling to make ends meet. But was it really an escape? Or was it just another trap? The night of the exhibition arrived, and the pressure had never been higher. The Beverly Hills Art Center gleamed under the spotlight, a sprawling gallery of curated art, high-end guests, and photographers ready to capture every moment. Julian and Maya stood side by side, their relationship still a carefully crafted facade, but the tension between them felt real enough. Elaine Bennett was already in attendance, her presence a constant weight on Julian's shoulders. As much as he had tried to distance himself from her, tonight was a reminder of the chains that still held him back. Elaine was a force in his life, a reminder of everything he was expected to be, and the future that he wasn't sure he wanted. Maya, despite everything, tried to keep her focus. She had worked hard for this moment, the chance to finally show the world her art. But as Julian's hand brushed against hers, she felt the disconnect again. The unspoken words, the unresolved tension. It was as if their worlds were pulling further apart, despite their shared goal. "Are you all right?" Julian asked, his voice low, his eyes searching hers. Maya nodded, forcing a smile. "Just a little overwhelmed," she said, the weight of the situation settling over her. She wasn't just standing next to a millionaire at an art exhibition anymore. She was standing at the edge of a world that didn't seem to want her. As the night wore on, the crowd grew larger, the pressure increasing with each passing moment. And then, the inevitable happened. The one person who had been missing, Lila, arrived. Her presence was like a thunderclap, drawing attention wherever she went. Her perfect smile and cold eyes were sharp as daggers as she made her way toward the center of the room. And as expected, she made a beeline straight for Julian and Maya. "What a lovely evening," Lila said, her voice dripping with sarcasm as she eyed Maya, then turned to Julian. "It must be so nice to have the world at your feet, Julian. Do you feel powerful now that you're in control?" Maya's stomach churned as the tension in the room thickened. Lila's words were like daggers, aimed directly at Julian's heart. But it wasn't just about the two of them anymore. It was about their public image, the persona they had carefully cultivated for the world to see. Maya had stepped into a world of scrutiny, and she didn't know if she could handle it much longer. Just as the conversation seemed on the brink of a public confrontation, Julian's phone buzzed. His eyes flicked down to the screen, and for a split second, the color drained from his face. He quickly excused himself from the conversation and walked toward the back of the gallery, his face hardening with every step. Maya followed him, her heart pounding in her chest. "What's going on?" she asked. But Julian didn't respond. Instead, he looked at his phone again, his expression unreadable. "It's time," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We can't run from this anymore." As Maya looked into his eyes, she knew something had changed. This wasn't just about their exhibition anymore. This wasn't just about the kiss. This was about facing the consequences of their choices. The truth, the past, and the future were colliding. And no matter how hard they tried to outrun it, the storm was about to break. The night after the exhibition, the weight of Julian's words still hung heavily in the air. "It's time." The quiet finality in his voice had shaken Maya to her core. What had he meant by that? What was about to happen that they could no longer outrun? Her mind raced with questions, but deep down, she already knew the answer. They had been living in a bubble, a fragile bubble of illusion. The kiss, the exhibition, the fleeting moments of vulnerability, all of it had been a temporary escape, but reality was catching up with them faster than they could handle. Maya's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of her phone vibrating on the coffee table. She glanced at the screen. It was a message from Cameron. "Maya, you need to see this." The urgency in his message sent a chill down her spine. What was he talking about? What had he found? Without thinking, she tapped the message and opened the attachment. Her eyes scanned the screen, and her breath caught in her throat. A news article. The headline read, "Julian Bennett's Family Scandal, Secrets, Lies, and Power Struggles Exposed." The article detailed shocking revelations about Julian's father, Richard Bennett, and the hidden corruption within the Bennett empire. It spoke of questionable investments, illegal dealings, and the family's ties to some of the most powerful and dangerous figures in the country. But it wasn't just about the family's wealth. It was about Julian, how he had been kept in the dark about his father's dealings, and how his mother, Elaine, had been manipulating him all along to protect the family's legacy. And then, at the bottom of the article, the most damning revelation of all. Julian Bennett's role in his family's empire has been questioned after his involvement in the mysterious art exhibition and his recent public displays with model-turned-artist Maya Cruz. Is Julian a pawn in his family's game, or has he been playing a game of his own? Maya felt her stomach drop. This wasn't just a personal scandal anymore. It was a public spectacle, one that was spiraling out of control. The lines between what was real and what was fabricated were being blurred even more. She wasn't just Julian's ally in his rebellion against his family. She was now a part of the story, a story that had no easy ending. She quickly scanned the rest of the article, feeling a sense of betrayal creeping in. Julian hadn't told her the whole truth, about his family, about how far this game went. She had thought they were in this together, but now it felt like she was just another piece on the chessboard, manipulated, used, and discarded. A knock at the door jolted Maya from her thoughts. She knew who it was without looking. Julian. She opened the door to find him standing there, his face pale, his eyes wide with the same uncertainty she had seen in them the night of the kiss. He looked as if he were standing on the edge of something, a precipice, unsure of whether he should step forward or turn back. "Maya," he began, his voice low. "We need to talk." Maya stepped aside to let him in, her heart beating faster with each passing second. She had already seen the article, but she didn't want to confront him about it yet. She needed answers, but more than that, she needed to hear him say it. She needed him to take responsibility for the choices that had put them both in this mess. Julian walked into the living room, his hands fidgeting with the hem of his jacket. He seemed nervous, but not the way he usually did. This was different. This was real. "I should have told you everything," he said, finally looking her in the eyes. "But I didn't want you to see the truth. I didn't want you to see the mess my family's made of everything. I thought I could fix it. But now, it's out of control. And I don't know how to make it right." Maya felt the walls around her begin to crumble. There was guilt in his voice, but there was also something else. Fear. And that was the part that scared her the most, because it meant Julian was just as lost as she was. For a moment, the weight of everything that had happened, the kiss, the betrayal, the lies, settled between them, heavy and suffocating. Maya opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. What could she say? What could she possibly say to make sense of any of this? "You lied to me, Julian," she finally whispered, her voice shaking. "You made me a part of your family's game, and I didn't even know it. You used me to make a point, and I—" "No," Julian interrupted, his voice firm, but desperate. "I didn't use you. I never meant for you to get caught up in this. But I couldn't walk away. I couldn't. I thought if I did this, if I made you a part of this, it would help me break free. But it's not that simple. It's never been that simple." Maya's heart hurt as the words tumbled from his lips. She could see the conflict in his eyes, the struggle between wanting to escape his family's control and wanting to keep the people he loved close. But it was a fight he was losing, and Maya was caught in the middle of it all. The door slammed open suddenly, and Elaine Bennett stepped into the room, her eyes ice cold. "Julian," she said, her voice sharp, commanding. "You've made a fool of yourself, and now you're dragging this girl into it too. This is bigger than you. And if you think for 1 second that you can just walk away from the family," Julian turned toward his mother, his face hardening. "I'm done, Mom. I can't keep playing your game." Elaine's eyes flashed with fury. "Then you'll lose everything. Everything you've worked for. And so will she." Maya stood there, feeling the ground beneath her feet shift. This was it. The moment of truth. Julian had made his choice. But in doing so, he had damaged everything. And now, the consequences were staring them both in the face. Would he choose her? Or would he choose his family? The silence that followed Elaine's words was suffocating, like the calm before the storm. Maya could feel her heart pounding in her chest, the air between her and Julian crackling with tension. It wasn't just about the family drama anymore. It was about everything Julian had promised, everything they had built together, and whether or not it was worth fighting for. Elaine's presence was a dark cloud over the room, her eyes piercing as they flicked between her son and Maya, waiting for him to make his choice. But Julian wasn't speaking. His gaze was hard, his face a mask of uncertainty. "Julian," Elaine said again, her voice chillingly calm. "You're making a mistake. You know what will happen if you leave all this behind. Don't pretend you're not aware." Maya stood motionless, her breath shallow. The reality of the situation was clearer now than ever before. This wasn't just about Julian wanting to break free from his family. It was about whether he had the courage to break the chains that bound him to them, the ones he had been trying to escape for so long. She could see it in his eyes. He was torn. Julian had been living a life that wasn't his, a life dictated by his parents, by their wealth, and their expectations. But Maya, she was different. She didn't care about his family's empire. She didn't care about the power or the money. She cared about him, the real him. And that was something Julian had never really had. But Elaine wasn't going to make it easy. She stepped forward, her tone turning colder, more venomous. "If you walk away from this, Julian, you'll have nothing. No legacy, no future. You'll be nothing more than a failure, just like your father always said you would be." Julian flinched, the words cutting deeper than anything Elaine had said before. But instead of crumbling, he straightened, his jaw clenching as if he were finally taking control of his own fate. "I'm not afraid of what you or Dad think anymore." Julian's voice was steady, but there was a firmness to it that Maya hadn't heard before. It was like he had finally made his decision, and it wasn't the one his family wanted him to make. Elaine's face twisted with rage, her eyes flashing with fury. "You'll regret this, both of you." Before she could say another word, Julian turned to Maya, his expression softening. "Maya, I've made my choice. I've chosen you." Maya's heart raced at his words. She had spent so much time wondering if this was even possible, if Julian could truly escape the world his family had built for him. She never imagined she'd be standing here, hearing him say it so clearly, that he was choosing her. But what did it mean? Was it enough? Elaine's eyes narrowed as she turned to leave. "You think you're making the right decision, Julian, but you're not. You're walking away from everything, and you'll be alone, just like you always were before." With one last glance at both of them, she stormed out of the apartment, her heels clicking sharply against the floor, leaving a silence that felt more suffocating than the storm of words that had just passed between them. Maya's mind raced. Julian had made his choice, but she didn't know what to do with it. She hadn't expected him to choose her. She hadn't expected him to choose freedom, freedom from his family, freedom from the weight of expectations. But that didn't mean everything would be perfect. The world didn't just let go of people like Julian. The Bennetts didn't just let go of their control that easily. She looked at him, her heart heavy with the uncertainty of their future. "Julian, you're sure?" He nodded, a slow, determined movement, his eyes never leaving hers. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. This is my choice. And if I have to lose everything to have a life with you, then I will." For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The weight of his words, the gravity of the situation, it all settled between them, the room thick with emotion. This was no longer just about rebellion or love. It was about trust. It was about two people who had found each other in a world that wanted to tear them apart. But just as Maya was about to speak, her phone buzzed again. A text from Cameron. "The story is blowing up. The press is getting more aggressive. It's time to decide. Your future is now in your hands, not just Julian's." Maya's stomach tightened. The decision wasn't just Julian's anymore. It wasn't just about walking away from his family's empire. It was about her future, too. The truth was, she didn't know if she could handle the public eye, the constant scrutiny, the life they were building, or the inevitable backlash. She had spent so many years avoiding attention, avoiding drama, and now, it had all come crashing down on her. The doorbell rang. A second knock, then a third, followed by a sharp buzz through the intercom. Maya and Julian exchanged a glance. Julian walked toward the door, his hand on the handle, but paused. "This is it, Maya. There's no going back." Maya stood frozen, heart pounding, as the moment of truth arrived. Who was at the door? And what would this next choice mean for them? Whatever happened next, they would both have to live with it, together. The doorbell rang again, more insistently this time. Julian stood frozen in place, his hand still on the doorknob. The weight of the decision hung thick in the air between them. Maya's heart pounded in her chest. She wasn't ready for whatever was behind that door, but she knew that neither of them could turn back now. Julian took a deep breath and swung the door open, revealing a figure she hadn't expected. Cameron. His sharp suit, his cool demeanor, and that ever-present calculating look on his face made her stomach turn. Cameron, Julian said, his voice steady, but Maya could see the tension in his jaw. We need to talk, Cameron said, his gaze flicking to Maya. It's time. The press, the family, they're all on the edge. You don't have much time. Maya felt a chill crawl up her spine as Cameron stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. She had expected a phone call, maybe a text, but Cameron was here. In their space, right at the pivotal moment when their lives were about to change. She glanced at Julian, but he didn't look surprised. This was the reality they were now living in. There was no room for denial. What's going on? Maya asked, trying to steady her voice, but the uncertainty was there, seeping through her every word. She wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Cameron ignored her question, his gaze trained on Julian. The situation is escalating. Your family, Julian. He paused, scanning his phone. They're digging their heels in. Your father won't let you walk away so easily. And the press? They're already sniffing around your family's connections, your past. This isn't just about art exhibitions anymore. You're in this now, Julian. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Julian's face hardened. The weight of his family's expectations and the pressure of the world outside pushing down on him. The tension in the room grew heavier, and Maya felt like she couldn't breathe. She could see the storm clouds gathering in his eyes, the same fear she had seen in him before, only this time, it was sharper, more real. I can't go back to them, Cameron, Julian said, his voice thick with resolve. I won't be their puppet anymore. I'm done. I've made my choice. Maya's heart skipped a beat. She could feel the gravity of his words, but the reality of what was coming next was still unclear. Cameron's lips twisted into a smile, but it wasn't one of approval. It was more a smile of recognition, the kind you gave someone when you knew they had just stepped into a world they couldn't escape from. You think you're free, Julian? You think that walking away from them will be easy? Cameron's voice dropped to a murmur. You're about to find out how wrong you are. This isn't a game anymore. Your family doesn't just let go of things like you. Maya could feel the shift. Cameron's words weren't just warnings. They were threats. Julian's family wasn't going to let him go, and they weren't going to let her go either. Maya stepped forward, her heart pounding. She couldn't just stand by and let this happen. Not anymore. Julian, she said, her voice shaking but firm. What's really happening? I need to know the full truth. I can't stand in the dark anymore. For a moment, Julian didn't speak, his eyes searching Maya's face, as though weighing whether or not he could trust her with everything. He had kept so much from her already, so much pain. But then, he looked at her with eyes that were resigned, yet somehow free. You deserve to know, he said quietly, finally letting go of the mask he had worn for so long. Everything. Julian explained it all. The control his parents had over him, the empire built on shady dealings, the corruption that ran through every part of his life. He told her about his father's ties to the underworld, the dealings that had been covered up for years, and about Elaine, his mother, who had manipulated him for as long as he could remember, pulling the strings, making sure he was always within her reach. Maya's heart ached with the weight of it all. How much of Julian's life had been a lie, and how much of it had been trapped by forces beyond his control. But there was one thing that stood out above all of it. Julian had been running. Running from his family's expectations, from his father's legacy, from the control his mother had on him. And somewhere along the way, he had started running toward her. Maya. Maya knew that this moment was crucial. She could walk away, return to her life, leave the drama, the manipulations, and the press behind. She had been an outsider for so long, and this world wasn't hers to claim. But there was something in Julian's eyes that made her hesitate. It wasn't just about the art anymore. It was about him. It was about them. Julian stepped toward Maya, his hand reaching out to her, his eyes full of a new determination. We don't have much time. They're coming for us, Maya. I can't do this alone. Please. Just as he reached for her, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Someone was coming. The door slammed open, and Elaine entered, her face storming with fury. Julian, she spat, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. "I told you. I warned you. You think you can run from this family? You think you can walk away from everything?" And in that moment, Maya knew. The real battle had just begun. The fight for their future wasn't just about escaping the Bennett family. It was about choosing freedom, and whether or not they would survive it. Maya stood frozen, her breath caught in her chest. The storm had arrived. Elaine's cold gaze swept over her. But it wasn't just Maya she was angry with. Julian had crossed a line. For years he had been the perfect son, the heir to a fortune that ran on control. And now, he had chosen to break free. But could anyone really escape the Bennett family's grip? "You're making a mistake." "Julian," Elaine's voice sliced through the room, the words like poison. "You think you can just walk away from all of this? From everything you've built?" Julian didn't flinch. He had been running from this moment his entire life. But now, there was no going back. "No, Mom," he said, his voice steady, more confident than he'd ever sounded before. "I'm not running anymore. I'm standing up for myself. And I'm standing up for us." Maya felt Julian's hands slip into hers, their fingers intertwining in the silence. The weight of everything they had been through, the lies, the kiss, the family pressure, was heavy. But in that moment, she knew. They had crossed a line together, and there was no turning back. Elaine's face twisted with rage. "You'll regret this. All of you." She paused, looking between them. "You'll lose everything. You'll be nothing. And you'll drag her down with you." Maya's heart clenched. She had always known that Julian's world came with strings attached, but the stakes were higher than she ever could have imagined. But in that moment, standing in front of Elaine, with Julian by her side, something inside Maya clicked. She wasn't afraid anymore. Elaine was a force, cold, calculating, and fierce. But Maya wasn't the same person she had been when they first met. She had faced her own demons, built her own path, and found her own way in this world. She had fought for herself before, and she would fight for this too. She looked Elaine square in the eye, the strength in her gaze surprising even her. "I'm not afraid of you," Maya said, her voice steady. "I'm not afraid of losing everything. Because the truth is, Julian and we've already lost everything. But we have each other." For the first time, Julian's mother faltered. Her mask of control cracked ever so slightly, revealing a flicker of vulnerability. But it was quickly gone, replaced by her usual cold composure. "You're making a huge mistake," she repeated, but this time, it lacked its former bite. "I'll see you both at the bottom." With that, Elaine turned on her heel and stormed out of the room, her footsteps echoing down the hallway, leaving a tense silence behind. Maya and Julian stood there, side by side, their fingers still entwined, the weight of the battle they had just fought beginning to sink in. "We did it," Julian whispered, his voice hoarse but full of emotion. "Yeah," Maya breathed, the exhaustion and relief flooding through her in waves. "We did." But the fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. They had taken the first step toward freedom, but the road ahead was still fraught with obstacles. Julian's family wouldn't just give up that easily, and the media would keep digging, looking for more dirt to spill. But for the first time in a long time, Maya felt like she could breathe, like there was hope. They didn't have all the answers. They didn't have the perfect future waiting for them. But they had each other, and that was enough. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, press conferences, and long talks between Julian and his family. There were threats, there were ultimatums, but through it all, Maya stood by his side. She wasn't just a pawn in a game anymore. She was an equal, Julian's equal. And as the dust began to settle, the two of them began to rebuild. Not just their lives, but their relationship. One step at a time. They knew that freedom wasn't easy, but it was possible. The final moment came unexpectedly. One evening, when Julian pulled Maya aside after a long day of meetings and press chaos. They were standing on the rooftop of the building where it all started, the same rooftop where they had shared their first kiss, under the stars, with the city sprawling out beneath them. "Maya," Julian said, his voice tender, his hand reaching out to hold hers. I've made mistakes, but I'm not going to make another one. I want to build a future with you, not just a relationship, a future. Will you stay with me? Will you choose me, like I'm choosing you? Maya's heart skipped a beat as she looked into his eyes that had once been filled with fear, but now were filled with hope. She smiled softly, her chest swelling with the realization that this was real. This wasn't just a game. This wasn't a fleeting escape. I choose you, she whispered back, her voice full of certainty. I choose us. And for the first time in a long time, both of them were free. Sometimes, freedom isn't about running away. Sometimes, it's about standing up, facing everything that has kept you trapped, and choosing to live. They had chosen each other. And that, in the end, was all that mattered.